What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to the Eating Shit podcast. If you're new here, the point of this show is to quickly come on here once a week and share the lessons I've learned with you guys in real time so you don't have to make the same dumbass mistakes that I have. Stupid. Or just learn from my experiences in general. The only thing I ask is if this episode provided value for you, share the show with your people or someone you think will also get value from it. And if it didn't provide value for you, come back next week. Let's try again. And that may have sounded a little bit scripted because I was reading that word for fucking word. So let's get into the unscripted shit. Right into lessons this week. You know, I was thinking this week, if you guys watch, I guess the vlog that's, will be coming out after this episode on the FEEKiflips YouTube channel, sort of a similar vibe to what's going to be said here in this podcast, because this week was kind of boring in the grand scheme of things. It was just a lot of office work. I wasn't in the field at all. And we were just hyper focused, which we'll talk about towards the end of this episode in the wins section. So I was really just trying to think of lessons. And I mean, we've started off this podcast with some fucking banger lessons, like losing $110,000 on one deal. It's like, damn. I mean, hopefully we're not going to be trying to up that every week just to get some value and some content for you guys. But you know, this week, drama as always. You know, if you guys are doing deals consistently, you guys know that always something going on. Last week's episode was about this deal that fell apart because the seller's payoff was $40,000 higher than they told us. And, you know, lesson learned there on making sure that we get the payoff ordered early in the escrow process so we don't spend 2 months working on the deal that we can't buy in the first place. This week, we had another deal fall apart, which we've had this deal locked up for quite a while already. And another one of those deals where it's just like, man, this thing is so unlikely to make it to the finish line. Like, obviously you hope it does because we want to make money, but it was unlikely. So yeah, it's kind of a funny story on this deal. And, you know, this one, Kyle, our acquisition manager here at the company, I feel bad for him because he's been working on this shit for so long. I mean, he's been talking to the seller on this for like 3 or 4 months now. And he's taken appointments with her, several appointments. And she has just been super unresponsive. I'll just say tweaker-like because, you know, that's her behavior. And yeah, it's just been a bummer for him because he did nothing wrong in this deal. And when shit goes wrong for us, I always try to think of like, you know, what can we do better? And obviously that's kind of the stem of this podcast anyway, which is like, where's the lesson here and how can we avoid it next time? But when I think about this deal, like we really haven't done all that much wrong. There's still lessons in it because, you know, especially if you guys are not doing deals, this is just valuable for like, this is the reality of a wholesaling or a flipping company. You know, on average, when you're dealing with distressed property and distressed sellers, distressed situations, these are the type of people that you deal with. So what I'm about to tell you guys, just expect it. And you guys that are doing deals, this is not going to be news to you. You're going to be like, yep, I've had several that sound just like that. But yeah, when I thought about kind of what we could have done wrong here, I'm like, dude, I don't think that we really did anything wrong. Like the only thing I can think of is if we would have locked the deal up sooner, maybe we could have avoided all this drama that I'm about to go into, but it wasn't for lack of effort and it wasn't for lack of closing skills. Like Kyle's a great closer and I know that he followed up relentlessly like a motherfucker, to, you know, get the deal, and it just didn't happen, at least for a while. So this deal was a pre-foreclosure. And she contacted us through our website, something like that. But, you know, pre-foreclosure deals, you know, through doing some content stuff and running the local meetup I have here in Reno, I talk to a lot of new people like every month, several new people every month. And these new people, they always want to go after pre-foreclosures. And I get it because it's a great source of motivation. And if you guys aren't super familiar with the business model, you know, when you're flipping or wholesaling and you're going direct to seller, we're always looking for motivated sellers, emphasis on the word motivated. Someone that wants to sell their house, they're not going to sell it at a discount. There's no reason for them to, and it's truly not in their best interest to sell the house at a discount if they aren't motivated. Now, there's about a million reasons why someone can become motivated, but 9 out of 10 people that we talk to, they're not a motivated seller, and we don't really even try to close them because it's not in their best interest. They should just list it. But for the other 10% of people, the cash offer, the certainty, the speed, all these things that we can offer as investors is truly in the seller's best interest rather than just highest net proceeds, which is what you'll get when you list the property. So for a pre-foreclosure, when you're dealing with these timelines that are coming up and depending on what the seller's financial situation is and whatnot, the easy button that an investor can offer is really a good fit. So I get why, there's people go after the pre-foreclosures, but the downside to them is that, one, they're like the highest competition leads you can get because it's all public information in who's pre-foreclosure. As soon as you get the notice of default and the notice of sale, that stuff's all recorded with the county. So every investor ever is hitting them up. Every realtor's hitting them up. All the scumbag bankruptcy attorneys are hitting them up, trying to get them to declare bankruptcy to prolong the inevitable foreclosure of their home because they're just going to foreclose about 2 months after they get them to do that. But you guys can tell I've had a bad experience with a couple of bankruptcy attorneys. But that's the downside to these leads. Like, they're free, they're high motivation, which equals massive competition. But also the downside to these leads that you don't understand until you've worked a lot of them is that most of the sellers really do need the help, but most of them are in denial of their situation, and they all have the same attitude. And this lady's attitude, I don't think it was really like this. And, since Kyle's on the appointments and talking to him and stuff, I don't know for sure. But when I used to do all the appointments and I used to work all the leads, the attitude of a pre-foreclosure lead is typically denial. The bank fucked them 4 years ago and all of these fees and this not. It's actually the same MO as last week's episode, if you guys listened to the story on that one. But it's always that the big bank fucked them over and they actually aren't behind on payments and they don't owe all these extra fees and this and that. Just the kind of I guess that's the demographic of people that are in pre-foreclosure and then eventually foreclosure. So she contacted us. We had been in contact with her. Whenever we get a lead, obviously we're getting back to them as fast as possible. We're taking appointments as fast as possible. And Kyle did end up taking an appointment with the seller months ago. I think that, we use an app called Company Cam to take photos when you're on appointments, and it's really nice. You guys that take a lot of appointments know how bad it sucks to have your phone, like the camera roll just filled with fucking photos of distressed property, even if you do put them into a Google Drive or whatnot and you forget to delete them or just transferring them into Google Drive. This app Company Cam does that for you. It's like I'm fucking promoting them, but it's expensive for what it is, and I'm not getting anything for this, but it is a good product. So our first project in Company Cam with this specific house was back in October. And then he took another appointment later on, still didn't sign. I don't think, maybe, yeah, he did sign on the second appointment. So we have 2 sets of photos from the property in there. But, he just could not reach this lady. She didn't get a new phone number. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but, it's just super non-responsive. And we know that she's in pre-foreclosure and we're always scratching our head, how has she not got the NOS yet? Because typically, if you guys don't know, a pre-foreclosure timeline kind of looks like, I guess it's state specific, but in Nevada, I believe it's 90 days for the NOD, notice of default. And then once you get the NOS, the notice of sale, you got typically about 30 days until the property sells at the courthouse steps. And if no one buys it, then it becomes bank owned and they take the house back. So she had gotten that NOD, but she hadn't got the NOS yet. And we're like, what the hell? And then until way later in the process, you guys can see all of this public record, recorder's website in the county. And then, we saw something get filed that she was trying to work with the bank to do some sort of mediation type deal, work out a deal with the bank. And the thing that was recorded said that she had not provided the correct documentation for whatever they needed to work with her. So they're going to go ahead and proceed with the foreclosure. So we knew that it was coming, but we were still scratching our head why hasn't it come yet? But kept following up with her. And then, all of a sudden, I think I was sitting right here. He comes back in pretty late one day from the appointment there, and he he like shows the contract. I was like, nice, dude. And he was all, but I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. And he was like, but I just got a text from this other guy that says he has it in contract. And I was like, oh, shit. All right. So this type of stuff happens. Not quite this bad. I don't want to say this happens frequently, but this type of stuff does happen. So we couldn't tell who was lying to us because now we have another buyer who was wholesaling the property in contact with them. We're in contact with the seller again. And then Kyle just signed a contract with her, like literally 20 minutes before this conversation. And by the time he got back to the office, he has a text from this other buyer out of California that says, hey, I have the sorry, like I have this in contract, blah, blah, blah. And Kyle talked to him, and Kyle obviously had never dealt with this before. So he just talked to him. He didn't know who to believe either, but we got the seller on the phone, surprisingly, probably because he had just left. And, I'm on the phone with her, speakerphone with Kyle, and I'm like, hey, so this is the situation. She swears up and down she didn't sign a contract with these guys, and she can't believe this is going on. She feels violated, all this stuff. And I was like, well, they said they signed it over DocuSign. So it's really, really easy to check. Pull up your email right now and just search DocuSign. And I don't know, maybe if you did, like maybe you forgot, or I don't know. Let's just double check. So she did. She said, nope, there's nothing here. I was like, all right. So now I truly don't know, you want to be nice and take people's word for it. But I'm like, is she lying to us? And like, we offered her a little more money, and she signed with us when she had already signed a purchase agreement with someone else, or is the other buyer lying to us? And I was like, maybe they were thinking they were hella close to getting this deal, and now they found out that we just signed her because she hit them up as soon as Kyle left and said, oh, sorry, I just sold it. And now he's trying to like big dick us out of the contract and say, oh, sorry, I already have it under contract. I filed a memorandum of contract with the county and blah, blah, blah. So we're like, shit, I don't know. And so we kind of just played it cool and did nothing. I was like, well, let's see if we can get some more info from the seller later on. I was like, I'm going to file a memorandum tomorrow. If you guys don't know that little trick, it's essentially just something you file on the property with the county recorder. And all it says is like, we have a contract. We entered into a purchase agreement with the seller on this date. And here's my contact info. And essentially you're leaning the property. So if the seller is getting squirrely, like they're not going to show up to closing, or if they're getting squirrely, like talking to other buyers after you've already signed a contract with them, you file the memorandum. So then if they try to sell it to someone else, as soon as the other escrow pulls the title commitment, they're going to see this lien on the property, and they cannot issue title insurance or, provide the property to the end buyer with clean title without us releasing that lien. So they would have to call me directly. And then at that point, it would be like, well, give us 10 grand and we'll release it. Or, you would just be negotiating with the seller or the buyer, whoever. Luckily, I've only really filed a couple times when I had bad feelings about it. Never had to try to get paid off of one of them. It's just kind of a security thing. But I was like, well, this is about as squirrely as it gets. So we're definitely going to file a memorandum. So we filed the memorandum. So he got the contract on a Thursday. Friday, filed the memorandum. I let title know what was going on already. And then weekend went by. Monday comes around. And then this was the week that we went to the last Wealthy Investor event that I've talked about on here a bit and on the feekiflips YouTube channel. And actually, this specifically, what I'm about to talk about is on that vlog that's on the YouTube channel, where I was like, yeah, I was super frustrated. I missed Pace Morby's speech because I was dealing with some bullshit. This is the bullshit that I was dealing with back then, a few weeks ago. So, we're getting ready to market the property because we're going to wholesale it. So I've got everything uploaded into Investor Lift. And it's like ready to go. I think we left on Tuesday morning, or no, it was Wednesday, Thursday. We were at that event. So Monday, Tuesday, I sent it just to one buyer because we knew that access was going to be very, very difficult just because of how unresponsive the seller had been in the past with us. So I'm like, all right, let's do the homie deal on this and see if we can just like do a clean deal, not put too much effort into, access and all that stuff for an open house. And it's still owner occupied. It was just going to be a headache. It was one of those deals that, you're pumped that Kyle came back with the contract, but you just see the writing on the wall. Like, this is going to be fucking hard to turn into money. That's for sure. So, was waiting for him to get back to me. In the meantime, I put together the marketing on the investor lift, but I just had the property set to draft. I had not made it live yet. So that was Monday, Tuesday. Still hadn't called the other wholesaler because I was like, I don't see any benefit for us contacting him because like, what are we going to do? Either he's lying or the seller's lying, but either way, like we know we have a contract that if it was me, and that was, we had a contract on something and I was talking to another buyer. The first thing I would have done is like, yeah, I'll send you the contract just to verify. And he didn't even offer to send that to Kyle. So I thought that was kind of weird. And then also, we filed that memorandum Monday morning. It shows up. There's nothing else on title. So I was like, they didn't fucking file shit. And I told Amy that, our escrow officer, so she was on the lookout. I told her to re-pull the commitment just in case, now that ours was there. And so we get to the event Wednesday morning, and then Kyle sent me a screenshot, and that guy, the other buyer, was just lighting him up. And he was like, basically like, I can't believe, I told you guys we had a contract and now you're trying to market the property. I see it right here on Investor Lift and blah, all this stuff. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, I kind of got scared for a second because I was like, shit, I wasn't ready to put the property live yet. It was still in draft. I was like, damn, I must have clicked live on accident. And then, so I pull up Investor Lift and my shit is still in draft. It's like, what the fuck? And then I go on the buyer side of Investor Lift where you can get deals, and there's the fucking house, same house. I was like, oh, a third buyer is now involved with this, different person. So I called them first, whoever was listed as the dispo manager. I called him. I was like, hey, interested in that, the property you guys have in Reno. I think they're out of California too. And I was like, yeah, when did you get the contract on this? And he was like, oh, like my buddy does acquisitions. I don't know. I was like, was it like yesterday or something? Like pretty recently? He's like, yeah, he just sent me a text like late last night and was like, randomly got a deal in Reno. And I was like, yeah, because we signed a contract with her about a week ago. And, I have a memorandum filed and I'll send you both of them. And he was like, oh man. I was like, yeah, sorry, it sucks. And I was like, and funny enough, like we're actually in the same situation you are now in, because as soon as we signed a contract with her, we had another buyer saying that they had already signed a contract with her. And so he was cool at first. And then I called the original buyer because now I need to talk to the guy. And so I just let him talk, and he was very, what was the word? Like very, I can't think of it right now, but he wasn't very happy. And, I was like, hey, I work with Kyle. And I was like, so can you just, kind of fill me in what's going on here? He's like, well, I've already told Kyle, and blah, and just like starts going off. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Yeah. And reactive was the word I was looking for. But because then I let him talk and I was like, hey, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. And then I was like, hey, just a tip for you going forward. I was like, don't be so reactive. And I was like, and then he cut me off and he was like, well, this is, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Exhibit A is what I said to him. And I was like, I said, don't be so reactive, because that message that you sent lighting up Kyle, that's not even us on Investor Lift. The seller has signed a contract with a third buyer. And crickets after that. He was just like, oh, he felt like such a dumbass. So I was like, now we're both in the same boat. I was like, please send me your contract. He's like, yep, I'll do it. And then, because I still don't know if he even has a contract or not. But he's definitely acting like he is. So at this point, I'm like, dude, who knows what's going to happen here. So he forwards me the DocuSign, and he in fact does have a contract that's like 2 weeks before ours. And it didn't make sense this whole time. And that's why I was so apprehensive about this other buyer, because it was always a price thing for the seller. And, you know, she owed in the low 200s or something. She wanted 300 grand for the property. Our offer the whole time was like 230 to 235, somewhere in there, over these couple months. And then he said that they locked it up at the payoff. And they did it in a really weird way because they didn't know what the payoff was. So they signed at 195. And then in additional terms, he said that they put, they'll take it for whatever the payoff is or whatever. I'm like, okay. So he forwards me this contract, but that doesn't make sense to me, because as the seller, if you guys listening, if you were the seller and it's always been a price thing, why would you sign a contract with someone for $30,000 less than an offer that you know you have? And that other offer, that person's actually seen the home. Makes no sense why she would take 30,000 less for someone that hasn't seen the house yet, that's out of state, that hasn't been talking to her for 3 months. Makes no sense. My best guess is that she was inebriated, let's say that, and that's when she signed the contract. And who knows what their conversation was like. I don't know. You never want to be on that end of signing a contract with someone, that's for sure. So anyway, he forwarded me the DocuSign. They had the contract. Could that have been faked? Yeah, I guess. But okay, I'm not going to be fucking Sherlock Holmes here trying to figure out if she did this or not, because she still swears up and down that she hadn't signed a contract before. But looking back, she probably did. And then maybe remembered that we had a higher offer, then signed with us. And then the next day, or, you know, not the next day, but 2-3 days later, Rando from California calls her, because this is a pre-foreclosure lead and everyone knows that she's in pre-foreclosure, and they offer her probably 5,000 more than our offer. So she signs a third contract with that person. That's what really drives me up the wall about people like this, is that like they think they can just do whatever the fuck they want. Like they didn't enter into a binding thing with that first buyer, and then with us, and now with these guys. And she would have done it 4th, 5th, and 6th time too if they were there, but they just weren't there. So that's what happened. And then, you know, with the first buyer, I'm like, he sends it over. I'm like, cool, thanks. You know, send me the memorandum, because I still don't see it up here. Oh, he's like, yeah, I'll have my TC send it to you. I'm like, okay, cool. And where do you have this opened as far as escrow goes? He's like, oh, all of our Nevada deals are Ticor. Probably never done a deal in Nevada, but okay. So I was going to find out with who, so I could call them as well. And a couple days goes by, nothing, silence from him, followed up, nothing, followed up again. And then he finally responds and was like, hey, sorry, my TC's been sick. Looks like we never filed the memorandum. Looks like we never opened up escrow. We're not working on this anymore. Good luck closing it. Like, okay. Not sure why, but okay, fair enough. And then in this time, the third buyer still has the deal on InvestorLift, even though I told them to take it down and I sent them our notarized lien and our contract, but they're still trying to sell it. So after a while, and this whole time, we can't reach the seller after she signs the third contract, of course. We talked to her a couple times and she was like, oh, I want to cancel because, you know, my family has to move in with me now, which we know is bullshit, because I'm talking to the other buyer. We know that she already signed another contract for likely a higher price, and that's why she wants to cancel. She's just lying to us this whole time. So all that was going on. And then all of a sudden the deal's not on InvestorLift anymore. I was like, they bailed on it. They couldn't find a buyer. And then weird, as soon as that happened, she starts communicating with us again because they canceled the contract. So then we got sick of it, and we were down on our last day of due diligence, and we hadn't even fucking got access yet because all this stuff was going on, 3 weeks of this. And so I printed out an extension for close of escrow and due diligence, and also cancellation. I gave him to Kyle. He had another appointment out that way. So he's like, I'm going to go door knocker and see if I can cancel. And he was so sick of dealing with it at this time. He comes back, he got the extension signed. I was like, all right, cool. Like, we'll keep working on it. And he was like, I tried to cancel. He's like, I didn't even tell her I had an extension. I was just there to sign cancellation. She was begging me not to. So we extended. I was like, all right, fair enough. And then, so I'm like, cool, start working on this again. I start sending it out here and there. And the very next day, she texts Kyle another novel, wants to cancel again. Neighbor's going to buy the house or for 300,000 or whatnot, which is always bullshit. It's never once happened. We hear that all the time. Never once has the neighbor or family member actually closed on the home. And so at this point, we're just like, fuck it. We don't want to deal with it anymore. So then he did drive back out there with actual cancellation instructions, and we canceled it. So at least since we have signed cancellation, we get our earnest money back, but also huge waste of time. But that's basically every detail of this deal. And I can't think of anything really, like I said at the beginning, that we could have done differently to mitigate any of this, because we're just following up as normal. We're signing the contract, with the seller like we always do to purchase. And then the drama starts that she has already signed a contract with another buyer. And then she signs one with another buyer after us, and she's non-responsive, and we're always trying to get in touch with her, and we're trying to get access. We extend. It's just like, usually if something goes wrong, it's like, there is the misstep right there that we can do better next time. This one, short of locking it up, like I said, months earlier on that first appointment and just like closing it, maybe that would have done it. But at the same time, if she's willing to do this, like, she would have just done that months ago as well. So likely what's going to happen now, it's still in pre-foreclosure. There's basically no chance that she sells the property to the friend or whatnot, and it's going to go the steps, and someone will buy it at the steps. Or if, it's not a deal at the payoff for anyone, then, the bank will take it back, and she's going to lose the house, and she could have walked with fucking 20 grand with our offer or somewhere around there. So sucks for her. And that's kind of why I preface this with pre-foreclosure leads in general, because, that is your typical pre-foreclosure person. A lot of them they need the help, and like her, she definitely needs the help, and she just doesn't want to take it. And they just kind of live in an alternate reality sometimes. A lot of them, like, she definitely knows the timelines and the situation. And it wasn't like a denial thing about being in pre-foreclosure. A lot of them are just either in denial or are willing to go down with the ship type thing, which is also kind of strange. But yeah, so those are the pros and cons of pre-foreclosure leads. And I guess hopefully there's some lessons for you guys in that story. I'm sure there is if you've never really dealt with people like that. And if not, it's probably just a decent story if you have dealt with people like that. So a couple quick wins before we wrap this up for this week. We did get 2 deals assigned this week, which is good. Get a little bit of revenue coming in. And then, I've been talking about on the podcast that we're moving into a virtual market. So last week we did make the decision. We're going to Jacksonville, at least to start. So all of this week and then all of next week is basically grind time for getting everything set up for that market. Talked about that a little bit in the vlog that I just filmed, but really, like, the win on that, I think I said it in the vlog that this week was actually a bit less stressful for me than normal. And I think it was due to just working together so well as a unit for the first time. And I know we've had an issue with that before. And like, obviously everyone that works here, everyone knows what they're doing. We have like job roles and, we're working as a team, but I've never felt it so focused as it was this week. So, Kyle was doing his thing as he always does, like, because he really is, I may have said this on here before, but he's really been like our first hire for a specific job role that is also a good fit culture wise and for the role and everything like that. So with him, he actually has a very defined like job role that he does every single day. Whereas like Wes and I, Steve, Connie, before we had to let her go, told you guys about that last week, kind of wearing multiple hats for every single role. So it's much less focused. But now that it's like grind time, do or die, all all hands on deck. It was just like everyone fucking knew what they were doing. It was number one priority for everyone. And we got a shitload done this week, taking steps to get into that market. So then, you know, in a week from today, we can really just hit the ground running, and the whole thing's not going to be on fire and like, oh, the fucking phone system's not working, and oh, we don't have this set up, we don't have that. We're just like, let's take 2 weeks, go hard, get everything set up, all the data order, all the, you know, another cold caller ordered, get the CRM going, get the phone system set up, like everything we need to like expedite the process for doing deals immediately in Jacksonville. That's what we're working on this week and next week. So that felt really good just to have that. And, you know, hopefully we can learn the lessons from that as well, that just to keep it going, I guess, not just for these 2 weeks, but then moving forward too. Like we I'm hoping that we now have a new base for what it's like for everyone to be steering the ship in the same direction, and we just keep it going, because I keep thinking back like, fuck, if we could have been working like this for the last 3 years straight, we'd be so much farther ahead than we are right now. So I'll do my best to be a decent leader and keep everyone going like that. And then also, Go to Bed is back. That's a win just for me. Not really to do with the real estate business at all, but you know, that's a podcast that JP and I had a couple years ago. We haven't done it for 2.5 years, and we filmed the comeback episode on Thursday of this week, and we decided, you know, Thursday is kind of our day. We're going to get it going. Had a couple of hiccups with like the new software that we're using, the same software that I use for this podcast, but it's a little bit different with, you know, 2 people. So we had to do it actually the old way that we used to do it, and that's kind of why we quit, because the software it's called Riverside. It makes it super fucking easy to do podcasts and shit. How we used to do it, like we used to do it kind of how, you know, I guess you would do it the legit way, but we're just not legit. We don't have a fucking team to do it for us. So it becomes a lot when you have to like record the audio and mix and master the audio and do the video, and then put the audio and video together to make like the Spotify version or the YouTube version or whatnot. And then you got to cut up all the clips and all this other shit. With this Riverside app, we're doing audio and video at the same time. It's uploading to the cloud as I talk right now. And then when I'm done, like with this podcast, I literally just have to trim up the beginning and the end, and just to get rid of the dead space. And then I click publish, and then it takes a bit to process, but you know, within say an hour, this podcast will be live on Spotify and all the other apps. And then you can also edit clips and stuff within the Riverside app, which we may or may not use, but using, getting 2 people, we didn't know that we had to use like a separate computer. So next time be much easier. We had to do it the old school way. That's why it just dropped today, Saturday, instead of on Thursday. It took a couple days because the file's fucking huge. We did like 2.5 hours. But that was super fun. And that's a win for me just to bring that back, because that was always fun doing that until it became unfun because of all the fucking work we had to do it. So always just trying to increase efficiency all the time. And that's what I talked about on the first episode of this podcast, is like, you know, right now, if you guys are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, like this shit looks ghetto as fuck. I got the free water sign behind me still. I'm doing it on the webcam. I just got the ring light and the mic, and that's it. But it's like 80-20. Most people are going to be listening to this as a podcast, so fucking sounds the same. And I can easily set up, easily come on here and talk. I don't have to worry about like, oh, what am I going to talk about? Like, it takes me 10 seconds to think about that, write it down. Now I have a framework for the rest of the episode. I can record, and then with this software, like I just explained, I can easily get it up. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that with like all the content shit. Obviously it takes work, and it's much easier if you have a team, but I just don't have that team at the moment, not yet. So yeah, it's always about trying to do the same amount of work with, I guess, the same amount of output with less input on my end. So that's a win for me. That's about wraps it up. I don't want to make these too long. So thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. If anyone is still listening right now, I know not many people listen to the end. I forgot to add it in my intro. Please rate this like 5 stars on the podcast app, or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, because both those things help move through the algorithm and push it, or move up through the rankings and have the algorithm push it out to new people for organic reach. So thanks for watching. We will see you on the next episode.